speech. And we are now joined by a man with a close connection to Muhammad Ali. He's been a photographer at Madison Square Garden for 50 years. George Kalinsky joins us in studio. George, thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts with Muhammad Ali. I know this is obviously an emotional time for really everybody, but I think the thing is we all wanted to get a perspective of Muhammad Ali that we haven't seen, which is amazing considering all the videos and films that we've seen of him. But I think we should start off with your connection with him. And your career as a photographer actually almost began from a chance meeting with Muhammad Ali, right?
In 1966, I was walking in Miami by South Beach, and it was 5th Street, and I saw Muhammad Ali walking past me, and he was Cassius Clay at the time, and he went into the 5th Street gym, and I followed him, but Angelo Dundee was by the door, and he said, "You can't come in unless you pay your buck." Well, I had a camera around my shoulder, which I strictly used for taking pictures of my family. And I said, I don't know, it just came out of my mouth. I said, "I'm the photographer of Madison Square Garden."
Which you weren't at the time,
and I
right?
weren't. The only photographer I was at the time was for my family, and that's the only pictures I was taking. But he said, "Okay," Angelo said, "Okay, comedian, come on in." And so I went into the gym, and I started taking pictures of Muhammad working out. And I'm looking at my camera, and he was the first famous person I had ever seen. And I said, I could really do this. I like this. And after that segment of my life, I walked out of the gym, and I heard on the news that Ali was the top of the news. So I went to the Miami Herald with the roll of film that I had, and they developed it and put it over the wire service. And the next day, one of my pictures that I took was all over the world. So I went back with this one roll of film to John F.X. Condon at Madison Square Garden, and I said, "What do you think of these pictures?" And John said, "If you have the chutzpah to come to me with one roll of film, I have the chutzpah to hire you." And that's how I became the photographer of Madison Square Garden.
And ultimately, that began a friendship between you and Muhammad Ali that became so close that you felt like you could actually give him strategic advice for a fight. And it was such good advice, it became his calling card in fighting.
I got a call from Muhammad one Friday in 1974, and he said, "Can you meet me in the garden on Monday at 6:30? And he shows up at 6:30 in my office, and we went to the press room in the garden. It was an empty garden that night. There was nothing going on. And we went up to the press room, and I said, "Muhammad, what's going on? What's this all about?" He said, "You know, I'm fighting George Foreman in another month. He's too big, he's too strong, he's too fast, he's too young. I can't beat him." And it's like there was silence, and you don't know what to do. And I just thought of watching Muhammad in training all these years that I knew him. I said, "You know, Muhammad, all your life you've been training for this fight. You lean against the ropes, with your back against the ropes, and you let your sparring partner hit you. Well, that's what you're going to do the night of the fight with Foreman. You're just going to lean against the ropes, let him punch and punch and punch, act like a dope, let him act like he's going to knock you out. But in effect, what's happening is he's going to knock himself out." And I said, "You know, try that. Act like a dope on the rope." He said, "You mean like a rope-a-dope?" I said, "Not a rope-a-dope, a dope on the ropes." And we were playing around with the wording, and that's how rope-a-dope came about. But John Condon was in the room with us also, and Muhammad said to John, "What do you think of that idea?" And I don't know, it seemed like a good idea. Angelo Dundee said it was not a good idea and didn't want to try it, but then when he saw that Ali might lose the fight, he tried it, and Angelo said, "You know, that's the strategy we're going to use."
How much boxing experience do you have?
I had absolutely none. The only boxing experience I had was actually in a photo shoot going around with Ali.
And Angelo Dundee didn't like it. You suggested it, and it ended up being a strategy that's really the hallmark strategy for him.
I quickly fast-forwarding to about 5 or 6 years ago, I was sitting with George Foreman, and I said, "George, you can hit me all you want, but I have to tell you the story." And I tell him the story about what happened.
Right.
And he said, "I know all about that." He said, "And not only that, Muhammad went into the ring with fear. I went into the ring knowing I was going to win, but but I was too overconfident. And somewhere in the middle of the fight, we're nose to nose with Ali, and I just knew he had me. I knew I was going to lose, because you go into a fight with fear, and he had that fear, and I was too overconfident, and Muhammad just beat me.
Well, he's had some tremendous fights, and you were in the middle of a lot of those fights, obviously. Tell us about the photo shoot that he had with Frazier, because I heard the story that Frazier actually took a swing at him in the photo shoot that you were shooting?
I had a photo shoot in Philadelphia with Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, and it was the first time that anyone ever took nose-to-nose or head-to-head shots. But what I was really trying to do is get them to look like they're fighting the night of the fight. And I got them to, I said, come on, guys, make it look like that night. Jab a little, jab a little, jab a little more. And then Joe hits Ali in the stomach with a left hook, and Ali actually goes down. And it was like, oh, my God, what's going on here? And
what have I done?
And I'm alone with these guys. And Ali looks up at Joe. He says, you son of a gun can really hit. And Joe says, that's the way it's going to be, Clay. That's the way it's going to be the night of the fight. And I extended my arm for Muhammad Ali to pull him up. And he brings his trunks up to his neck almost with a smirk on his face. He said, you son of a gun really can punch. And he said, you know, and Joe said again, that's the way it's going to be the night of the fight. And it was quite an experience for me to have the two guys together like that.
Well, was he being bold? Was he jawing with Frazier before this happened? Was he trying to incite something? Were we seeing that natural Ali charm?
Well, Ali was just a showman.
Yeah.
And the fact that Joe hit him with the left hook in the stomach, he went down. That was legitimate. But, you know, Ali was in shock for a little bit.
He actually hit him.
And you know, and I think that moment stayed with Ali until the fight itself, because Joe really showed that he wasn't afraid of Ali. If anything happened with that situation, it was Joe showed that he wasn't afraid of Ali. But you know what? It was two heavyweight champions fighting that night, undefeated heavyweight champions. It was probably the greatest sporting event of all time. And it was the night at Madison Square Garden that really set the stage of every great event that would follow that for years to come. Yeah. They raised the bar, they set the standard. It was an epic fight, and it just became more famous as the years went on.
I mean, we all know Muhammad Ali as the poet, the bold man, you know, yelling, screaming, as much of a marketing genius as you could get back in the day. But was that what he was really like outside the ring? You knew him as a friend.
Muhammad actually spoke in a whisper when you were with him alone. This boisterous way that most people know Muhammad Ali is not really the real Ali. He just does that for publicity. He does it to sell tickets, as he said. I remember doing some road work with Ali 4 o'clock in the morning at the Concord Hotel in 1976 when he was preparing to fight for George Foreman, and after he invited me to go on the road work, I was in a car next to him.
Which means he was running on the side of the road where you were in the car shooting pictures?
I was shooting pictures of him at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we went back to his room after that, and I said, you know, Muhammad, I know you're fighting Foreman, you got to fight, but you really shouldn't be fighting anymore. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to do something that can permanently damage you for life. And eventually, I guess I kept on it a little too much, but he did respond by saying he knows I'm right. He knows that he shouldn't be fighting, but he said, you know what? The ring is my stage. I probably have the most famous face in the world. I like that. That's how I make my living. And I don't know what else to do. I have to fight because that's the way I'm able to be in front of the public.
Well, amazingly, you know, he's almost better known for his role outside of the ring than he was inside of the ring. He has been the official photographer at Madison Square Garden for the past 50 years. George Kalinsky, thanks for coming in and sharing some of your memories. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Steve. It really is great to be here.
All right, we'll talk more offset, okay?
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you.
Stick around. We'll be right back.